Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first here on 93 WIBC. We have quite a bit to cover regarding an update on strikes in Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to get to a huge series of bits and pieces on the news side tonight. So before we begin, I know that a lot of individuals who normally tune into the show, at least on the congressional staffer side, are at the congressional baseball game. And I had planned to make a little bit of a conversation, a little bit of an announcement regarding that event, but there is far more news to dive into. We'll have to get back to some of the more relaxed stuff here in a minute. Right now, the United States is engaged in a series of strikes against different targets in southern Iran, including air defense assets, radar sites, drone command and control facilities. That is according to a senior U.S. official to Axios. Additionally, and really what should be said in kind of an addendum, there also may be a series of infrastructure targets, including petrochemical facilities, perhaps some electricity and water infrastructure. We don't know for sure yet. Earlier today, of course, the President of the United States made a series of statements when getting ready to sign a reconciliation package into law, saying that Iran had essentially gone back and forth and led the United States on kind of a rabbit trail for far too long, and that now they were going to have to pay the price. Here's the President of the United States today.
You posted this morning about Iran, and you said that they've taken too long to get to a deal. I want to make sure I quote you correctly. You said that now they will have to pay the price. Yeah. What did you mean by that specifically?
Well, we're going to be attacking them very hard.
You're resuming bombing?
Yeah, well, we are. Based on the helicopter, I guess we have the right to do that. You know, they shot down a very incredible, actually an incredible machine. And at first they said they didn't do it, then they admitted they did. It was sort of easy because we have the bomb. We actually have the bomb. We got very lucky that bomb didn't explode. That bomb was lodged in the helicopter. It didn't explode. It was on fire, but it didn't explode.
So the President of the United States is making it clear that since the Apache helicopter was struck originally, and I think we actually have some of the initial statements from different Iranian media sources, where, before we get to CENTCOM here, yesterday, the Iranian media sources had tried to claim simultaneously, hey, we didn't shoot down the Apache helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. And the President of the United States later would call the downing of the U.S. Apache helicopter a miracle. No, not a miracle that the helicopter was downed, but that the Apache helicopter, which doesn't have ejector seats because, you know, big, huge spinning prop right above the canopy for the pilots, essentially the missile lodged between the control systems, between the pilots, and then they were able to take the Apache down. Again, still crashed, but everyone inside survived and was doing well. Now, the Iranian state media immediately came out and tried claiming, well, we didn't shoot down the helicopter. Okay, well, actually, we did, and it was unintentional. We were just, firing random rockets, as you do. And then you had the foreign minister, Araji, or one of their foreign ministers, come out and announce this is forever our Persian Gulf, with a weird Facebook graphic. Live, laugh, love, jihad. Forever 21. Forever the Persian Gulf. And then said, leave our region if you want to be safe. And so it appears that the President of the United States is, in fact, rather tired of it. Yesterday evening, we reported while we were on the air, there were 4 sites that were struck by the United States. So Sirik, which is one of the locations suspected of being kind of a small warehouse for several of the Shahed suicide drones, as well as a couple of radar sites and general monitoring equipment to keep an eye on international shipping, craft that would have a transponder on. So various assessing, monitoring pieces of equipment were suspected to be in Sirik. Those were hit yesterday. Manab also yesterday. Keshem Island, which is, if you could just picture the really big cities in the United States that put out a big concrete platform for all of their 4th of July fireworks. Essentially, it's just a big concrete pad with a bunch of tubes on it. That's kind of what Keshem Island is. It's basically the shooting range, the island. And then Bandar Abbas, which is a major naval port in Iran. So that was what was set forward yesterday evening. And then the president of the United States, people suggested that maybe the president was going to move forward back into this eternal negotiation territory, which is one of the things that he's done. He's kind of moved in and out of suggesting, it's time to negotiate and we're going to see if we can cut a deal. And then he would back out and say, well, maybe we're going to do something. The president said today a little bit more on the general timeline and why, and then broke some pretty incredible news during this, again, signing of this reconciliation package that's directly related to, obviously, the events currently underway in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz.
I've been working with Iran for a number of months, and they should sign their deal. It's a good deal. It doesn't give them the right to have a nuclear weapon. In fact, it totally prohibits them from ever having a nuclear weapon. And it was just tap, tap, tap. I don't know what they're doing. So they then shot at our helicopter, very expensive helicopter, by the way, but much more importantly, the two men, fortunately, they're okay. But an amazing rescue. If you ever get a clip, you won't believe the rescue, how cool it was. The equipment we have. Look, we have the strongest military in the world. And I gave them a break at the request of Pakistan, the Field Marshal and the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Did you catch this? Did you catch it? This is the president. And by the way, the way you can tell that the president is being very frank, clear, and upfront, he's going off the cuff. And he is simply reiterating from memory what the timeline of events are. So you've been hearing a lot of the speculation station of what was Donald Trump actually trying to accomplish? And not just from those over on the left, but there were even some members over on the right, including some who I normally get along with, both, for example, present colleagues and then former colleagues who left the kind of space to work in, we really don't like things that Trump is doing now kind of space, saying, well, actually, Donald Trump is just giving Iran absolutely everything, and this is just JCPOA 2.0. And some individuals pointed out, if Donald Trump, who has literally never changed his mind once, the man has had the exact same thoughts on his mind, even if they're not too particularly great, like some of the trusting, Peter Navarro with the tariff policy. Donald Trump doesn't change his mind. He hated the JCPOA deal. He has hated the Iranian regime since it took over. How do we know? They pointed cameras at his face in the 80s and said, hey, Trump, what do you think about that? And he's like, I think we should go in there and kick some ass. I mean, that's what he made a very clear point of. Trump's not about to turn around. So what you see right here when he's explaining why the decisions have been made, he's very clear with you. He said Pakistan, which means China, asked the United States to hold off to see if a deal could be brokered. And so he's saying here, so we did. We waited for just a couple of minutes.
Right. We stopped them from going to war with India. You would have had a nuclear war if it wasn't for me. But they became friendly to me, very friendly, and they're close to Iran, and they worked, and they still are working on trying them to do what's right. But we want a deal that's meaningful. We want a deal that works. We don't want to just have a Barack Hussein Obama deal, JCPOA, the worst deal. That was a path to a nuclear. It's the exact opposite. You know, I like on television, say, they should have kept that deal. First of all, it was over. It was a short-term deal. But that deal was a path to a nuclear weapon.
So he finishes here. I'm going to move on a little bit quickly here, just because the president goes on kind of, again, when he is being upfront and clear, he meanders through his reaction to the events that occurred. Why am I saying this? Trump has not changed. That is exactly how he communicates, the way he makes promises, the way that he makes statements, the way that he tells a story. Ain't nothing changed. So in regard to the president here, he finishes off by saying, the Iranians dragged us along and along like they were playing us and taking us for a ride. I didn't like that. So after they struck the helicopter, the United States then has the ability and the authority for the president to respond. This is true, by the way. That you could say, well, there's a 60-day limit and things. The United States Navy, at the request of the President of the United States, has the constitutional authority to blockade any country on earth. And by the way, don't look at me. That would be the Supreme Court of the United States, who said, sure, Trump, maybe you can't go and just issue tariffs for whatever reason, national emergency, whenever. But you do have an economic ability to affect trade. According to the Constitution, you want to go park the Fifth Fleet right outside of some country and go, I don't think so, you have the ability to do that. And that's according to Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Radio crew, we're going to send you to the commercial, continuing on the live stream without that interrupting break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. So the President of the United States has made it clear that it is because of the Apache helicopter, because Iran wouldn't leave well enough alone. Again, saying, no, we need Israel, we don't need Israel, we need you to do this, give us the money, all of this nonsense. That finally, the President of the United States directed Central Command to, how did the President put it today? Do a good bit of bombing. And then this was Pete Hegseth on what was going to happen this evening. Here's the Secretary of War.
But of course, he is busy because CENTCOM, Central Command, will be busy tonight because President Trump said we will be hitting Iran hard, and we will be. Because Iran has a chance to make a good deal, a great deal, to codify what they said they've been willing to do, and they haven't been willing to do it. So, as President Trump said, they've been tapping. You can see when someone's trying to tap on a deal. Instead, they're going to have tap bombs dropping on key facilities in Iran from the United States of America.
Now, we said this yesterday, that there is no situation here in which the Iranian, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is actually going to cut a deal with the United States. We talked about some of that stuff yesterday, but given this information, before we get to the inflation comments and the president's announcement that we have effectively been smuggling oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. Again, as we have reported here on the show before, there appeared to be several satellite footage snapshots that showed some ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. And then you would turn around and you would look at news reports from Axios and the Washington Post and BBC, and they would say, no ships are going through. Yeah, that's nope. That's not quite how that works. So something funny was going on, and the president later said today, live for the first time, that it was because the United States was smuggling somewhere between 100 million and just under 500 million barrels of oil on over or almost 24 ships out of the Strait of Hormuz and out of the Persian Gulf. Essentially, the United States pulling a little Venezuela 2.0 and taking the oil before Iran had a chance to just set it on fire. And now it appears to be too late because the oil is out. So there's a retired Air Force general whose name I don't remember, but I was following today on a network TV hit, as my day job is the national correspondent for the Daily Signal. And he made a point that once the United States had secured a supply of crude oil and some of the oil that was not just the kind of the unrefined crude, but also some strained, purified crude, and then some refined products, the United States then had leverage to essentially jumpstart the Iranian new leadership if the Kurds ever decide to stop being useless, if the Kurds ever decide to actually rise up in Western Iraq and Eastern Iran, which they're very, very worried about over there. That's why there have been rocket strikes and drone strikes and a whole lot of intelligence shenaniganry, some of which I can't share over the air, in Eastern Iran and Western Iraq over the last couple of weeks. So this finally brings us back to what is currently going on. So CENTCOM issued a statement at 5:42 p.m. That they had, quote, U.S. Central Command Forces, CENTCOM, began launching additional self-defense strikes today at 5:15 p.m. Eastern against multiple targets in Iran at the commander-in-chief's direction. The strikes are in response to Iran's unwarranted and continued aggression. Now, right off the crack of the bat here, I am rolling in laughter over a lot of those who are very quick to defend Russia for going to war in Ukraine, for what Russia says is an act of self-defense to Western aggression, are very upset that CENTCOM is calling this a response, a continued response, to the downing of an Apache helicopter, the attempted murder of American servicemen. They're saying, well, this isn't actually a self-defense strike. And I'll give you this. No, we all know, you, me, and Dupree, that it's not necessarily a self-defense strike. It's a legal mechanism to continue military operations with Iran. And that brings us all the way to what is happening right now. This is the key stuff because these updates are changing very quickly. All right, so we are now bringing the radio crew back in from their commercial break. Welcome back. This is the Tony Kinnett here on the Daily Signal. So there are a number of sites that have currently been confirmed struck by the United States forces, possibly the United Arab Emirates. We don't have any confirmation at this point in time whether the United Arab Emirates has taken part in strikes. We'll get into the conversation regarding co-belligerents as we know them yet in just a second. Now, some of the targets that I'm going to read off here for those who are over on the live stream, you can see the map that I have up, are not going to appear on this map because the list of targets that have been hit by several strikes that have been confirmed hit at this point are now more than exist on this map. So this includes the nuclear site Isfahan, which is much closer to Tehran and is not near the Strait of Hormuz coast, or excuse me, the Persian Gulf coast. Bushehr, which is the northernmost target along the Persian Gulf. Mor, Kish, Bandar Kagan, and Bandar Abbas, which are both Iranian port cities. Bandar Kangan is a suspected radar and then oil processing infrastructure location. Kish, Asuyale, Sirik, which we of course talked about, and then, you weren't shocked to hear this, also Keshem Island. Now, since we started the show at 7:02 p.m. Eastern Time, an Iranian revolutionary broadcast source, so that would be Iran's state TV, reported that air defense systems are also active over Rabat Karim in the Tehran province. There is also a series of updates now that we can confirm that there are a couple of explosions that are occurring over Tehran itself. We don't know if this is perhaps something regarding drone strike. 10 minutes ago, the United States just launched an additional series of strikes against Bandar Abbas. It does appear, as I had suggested earlier in the week, that the United States Navy is doing a little bit of landscaping along the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Now, in response to that, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, I don't have this, in the B-roll, so you'll just have to picture really ugly 1980s style marketing, not the really cool laser tech kind, but it looks like it was made in cheap knockoff Arabic PowerPoint. So the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, has announced a, quote, full and complete closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Wow. A day ending in Y. Anyway, quote, affecting all traffic, and the IRGC is claiming to have attacked 2 ships that were attempting to transit the strait without their permission. Now, a couple of minutes ago, meaning really at about 6:50 p.m. Eastern, so just 34 minutes ago if you're catching this show later, the Iranian state media had attempted to claim that they had struck a U.S. naval vessel in the area. They have now revised this to say, well, actually, we struck 2 commercial ships or maybe 2 mystical Viking ships. Who knows? Just ships, maybe 2 relationships. Maybe they're going after Graham Plattner's marriage. Who knows? Anyway, the Iranians are striking 2 ships of a certain kind in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, another IRGC post from the Fars Iranian State Network has suggested that it is the IRGC Navy that has engaged in boat-to-boat warfare with the United States. The Mer News outlet, which is another Iranian source here, says, quote, clashes have also occurred at sea between Iranian and American forces. So again, there's a little bit of trying to have things both ways. By the way, here's that post from the Fars Network claiming much of the same. Now, if you can't read squibbledygook, essentially this just says what I told you. There are strikes that are currently going on, a little naval clash going on in the Persian Gulf. The problem is that Iran has no boats. So if they just got out Uncle Kevin Shaw's bass boat and ran it at a commercial vessel, good for you. Sure. Again, if I'm not seeing any kind of video or photographic data regarding this yet, or at least as far as some of the maritime private military analysis and organizations are concerned, I'm not going to relay that to you guys as something that should be taken particularly beyond a grain of salt. Now, there are a couple of other Iranian state claims. One of these has been debunked. One of these, we're not quite sure. They have suggested they intercepted a cruise missile in the city of Asuyale and then also reported explosions on Keshem Island. From what we can tell so far regarding this interception of a cruise missile, unless Jim was on the roof firing a Kalashnikov into the sky and just got really, really, really lucky, I don't think so. I don't think so. Also, we're not really aware at this point in time of a lot of the kind of cruise missiles that could theoretically be intercepted by a standard surface-to-air missile battery that can be set up rather quickly. They don't exactly have the THAAD defense systems, which are not in and of themselves perfect, over in Asailuye in Iran. Now, there is, as I told you, one debunked report. Al Jazeera has already started trying to walk this back, but not before they got absolutely, dunked on. They said, breaking, Israeli media is reporting that Israel has launched strikes on Iran in what would mark a significant escalation in regional tensions.
Wow, the land of make-believe.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. And do you know how I knew this immediately? I went and looked at a list that I have. You follow these kind of events, you track these kind of events. You have several lists that you can go to for various sources. So I have, for example, an Iranian state media TV source. I also have a list of other Gulf state media, for example, media from the UAE, from Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Jordan, Macarena. And then I have an Israeli news source. If I need to say, hey, Israeli media is reporting everywhere X, Y, and Z, I can click this list and see all of the posts. And wouldn't you know it? I told Steve on Family Feud, Israeli stories about them joining the war. No stories like that. So they're already trying to walk this back. Now, don't worry, guys. The Iranian cavalry has arrived. I'm serious. There is a video that is circulating. The Ghost of Kiev has apparently made his way down to Tehran. There is a video that is floating around of a lone fighter jet. A lone fighter jet on patrol over Tehran. There he goes. With a big iron on his hip. So if he's still in the air, I didn't even know that Model T Fords could fly that high. But in either way, that seems to be the counter activity at the moment. Now, again, they've promised to close the Strait of Hormuz. No one is going to be safe, that kind of stuff. There is one following detail that I would be remiss if I didn't suggest. So Barak Ravid over at Axios is one of their foreign policy Middle Eastern experts, and he's supposed to be the unicorn whisperer when it comes to getting leaks from one particular office in the administration. And then he goes on media and says, oh, hey, here's the inside scoop. And sometimes Barak Ravid reports, every once in a while something that is true. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. And then there are times like today. So Barak Ravid has already gotten out there this evening and reported initially that a U.S. official told him these strikes were going to be a mile wide and an inch deep, meaning that this was going to be just a very short, lickety-split, hesto presto, 5:15 to 5:20. We're out. We have time to hit Chick-fil-A before we're home. Easy. And then that was going to open up negotiations. No. Now, those of you who are watching live may notice it is now 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it just so happens, or daylight time, I guess, it just so happens that the strikes are ongoing. A new wave of strikes has, been continuing over the last couple of minutes, and now appears the president has just told the Fox News side of things that he is, and I quote, radio crew, you better go to the commercial because I'm not going to censor this quote because it is one from the president of the United States. That doesn't mean the FCC is not going to find me for saying this, though. So see you guys after the commercial break. It's the Tony Kennett Cast. So I want to make sure I get this quote correct here. President Trump apparently just told Fox News, quote, he will, quote, bomb the shit out of Iran tomorrow night if they don't sign the deal. So, apparently, the president has made it clear they'll just continue doing a series of strikes. Now, the president also said U.S. jets were flying over Tehran. So, to that lone pilot over Tehran skies, it's no longer with us. 49 Tomahawk cruise missiles fired at Iran. Those are the kind that you can't just set an RPG on a coat hanger and fire for interception. And then said bombing will stop shortly. That is a full 2 hours of military action. Now, again, sorry, I think this would also be great. Qatar had sent a few mediators. Now, as a reminder, Qatar has now kicked out all of the Hamas, all of the Hezbollah, and all of the Iranian officials from their buildings and have shifted into a far more pro-America, pro-Gulf state leaning in a lot of its official diplomatic actions. However, the New York Times reported earlier this evening, quote, hopes for a diplomatic breakthrough dimmed after Qatari mediators left Tehran on Wednesday without progress in the negotiations. Man, I was just so sure that it was finally going to break through. Now, this brings us over to the president's big announcement today. So the president of the United States got up in front of the press and in front of the world, and he was asked about inflation. And as he was asked about inflation, he began and said, hey, inflation was really high this month. What's going on? And the president responded, well, I love that. I love the inflation numbers. And then a lot of very dishonest individuals who are patently retarded then cut the clip and uploaded it just like that. We have the full footage for you because we here on the Tony Kinnett Cast and at the Daily Signal, we don't believe that you're brain dead. Unless you're Maxine Waters and you're watching this, in which case we really can't speak for you, hon. Anyway, here's the president of the United States in the full context. We'll walk you through it.
Sure, the right people come into our country.
I will.
I will.
Are you concerned, Mr. President, about the latest inflation number which came out this morning? Could that be a
No, I love it. The numbers were.
So he said, are you concerned about the inflation number this morning? The president says, no, I love it, meaning the numbers being released. Continue.
Right. You know what I really love? I love the inflation. You know why? Because there's so.
Oh, he said, I love the inflation. Wow, I can't believe President Trump said, oh, we got him. Oh, man. We got him, guys. The walls are closing in. Quick, somebody get Chuck Schumer. I'm sure Chuck Schumer tweets in Arabic. Somebody get Chuck Schumer's tweet up. Oh, he said he loves the inflation. We got him. We got the president this time. Honey, quick, get your boyfriend. Tell him to come in here. No. Why? Because the clip doesn't end here.
As soon as this war is over.
He says, why do I love the inflation numbers?
I love the inflation. You know why? Because as soon as this war is over, I can say it now. Something you didn't know. We've been taking out millions of barrels of oil. Nobody knows it. You know who doesn't know about it? Iran, until right now.
And then he lets it sit for emphasis. Now, again, the president goes on for another 47 seconds. What he is clearly saying right here is that he loves that the inflation numbers are high right now because, he said, when this is all over, again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to guess where the president is going. You don't need to play a full game of Clue to figure this one out. It's not that deep. Radio crew, welcome back from your commercial break. We're continuing. The president of the United States, when he said, I love these inflation numbers right now. Do you know why? Because when this is all over, and he takes a side tangent and he says, by the way, a little additional here, we've also been taking a bunch of oil from Iran to the United States. 22 ships filled with oil have been snuck out, lights off, transponders off. Again, remember, we were talking about the United States Navy striking those radar sites, those sites tracking transponder data. Do you wonder why? Here's the president on this. And then he comes back and finishes his clause of when this is all over.
We took out the other night 22 ships, late at night with no lights, because they don't have any radar, because we blasted the crap out of it. We took out, that's why oil's $85 a barrel. I mean, you take a look. Remember when I did this, I said, look, the one bad thing will be we hit the best economy we've ever hit. And I said to my people, I had Scott, I had Howard, I had Pete, I had all of them.
I had Scott Bessent, I had Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary, I had Pete Hegseth, I had all of them, and I said, hey, we have this big economy going right now. What if we take this temporary hit because?
I had Todd in the room. I said, the one thing we have to do now, we had just hit the highest stock market in history, highest 401ks in history. Everything was going well, and I said, I hate to do this to you guys, but Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon very soon. We have to go and attack. So
So why say I'm happy about the numbers right now? Where was he going with this? Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what the president is indicating. After this is over, when the numbers come back down, what's going to happen? You're going to have a New York Times article. You're going to have a Washington Post article, and it's going to say, just because prices are coming down doesn't mean that Trump did anything. Just because the egg prices are going down isn't because Trump did anything. Just because, how do I know? Not only have you seen those articles before, you've seen those exact articles. Those exact same news stories. Well, just because Trump is doing, we saw this a little bit ago with the National Guard. Well, just because there's like no murders and carjackings that were going on in Washington, D.C., none of those are happening right now. That isn't because Trump sent the National Guard there. And Americans look at each other like, do you think anyone's believing you on this one? A more recent example. There was an article. There are several articles, from the usual suspects, but the one that's most prominent is from the Washington Post. And they're showing side-by-side pictures of the reflecting pool between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument. And they're going, Trump finished his project and it looks the same. No, it doesn't. How do we know? A couple reasons. All of the up-close photos and videos of the algae-filled nightmare that did not make the reflecting pool very nice. And now that the president did just very basic, fixed the pool things, didn't do anything like insane, just real estate man, fix the pool. There you go. But the media articles won't let it happen. That's what Trump is looking forward to. When this is over, when things are ending, that's, by the way, why Qatar was getting involved. Qatar now wants this done. Once the IRGC is not left with anything, not a deal, not a walk away and you get to be moderate, once the IRGC is ended, once the people in Iran are able to take control of the government, once the Kurds decide to be useful, and this Persian Gulf crew of the Kuwaitis, of the Saudis, of the Bahrainians, of the Emirates, all of these fantastic individuals and crews, whatever, the whole happy family. Once they start moving forward and things come down, this is the gamble. I've been telling you guys this on the show for those who are with us for not the first time here. I've been saying this for months. This is a gamble. It could go horribly and it could be wildly successful. And a lot of this has to do with Republicans not really doing anything at all in Congress. So it's all an executive bid. Now, just to clear things up here, because right now we're looking at, again, a couple of continual stories here. CENTCOM has issued a fact check kind of statement saying, quote, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claims that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And the CENTCOM crew is saying commercial ships are continuing to transit in and out of the Strait of Hormuz tonight. Interesting. The Tasnim Iranian news agency says that according to the Khatam al-Anbiya central headquarters, any vessel traffic through the Strait of Hormuz will be targeted. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Interesting stuff. I'm now we're getting to the speculation station. I'm not sure right now if it's even really worth saying anything regarding everyone saying, well, maybe it's over, maybe it's not. The United States has struck Iran. Again, the Iranians have not made any kind of a significant counterblow. Now, the IRGC has announced that they're going to hit Israel, I guess, which is interesting. And the Israeli defense minister responded that, the campaign against Iran and its proxies like Hezbollah, who Israel also threw a bunch of punches at this evening, that's far from over. And said the IDF is prepared to strike Iran with great force. All right. Meanwhile, here in the United States, there is another major media story. Now, kind of abroad, a lot of the globe is watching two things simultaneously. Number one, they're watching as the World Cup stuff begins. They're watching a lot of Europeans, Asians, Africans, South Americans, Oceanians come to the United States for the first time and realize how freaking incredible it is. The second thing they're watching are the protests against migrants by the Englishmen and the Irishmen in Belfast. And that's a cause of significant concern for Keir Starmer, who is mourning and weeping in the gnashing of his very ugly teeth. So we're going to get to that in a minute, because here at home, the bizarre... you go into this kind of a news story cycle and you start looking for statements from House leadership. And I did. I was looking for statements from like what Chuck Schumer might say about this particular engagement. I was looking for what Hakeem Jeffries might say. There are a lot of Democrats who are hiding. at the congressional level right now. And I think that really is boiled down to two things. Number one, Graham Plattner, who we're going to get to in a little bit. Number two, though, we're going to get to a series of just really, really bizarre racism. I don't know what racism and nonsense maybe is the best way to frame some of this stuff up. So on the racism nonsense. So Karmelo Anthony was convicted of murder against Austin Metcalf in Frisco, Texas. We talked about this yesterday, of course. And after being convicted, he was sentenced to 35 years in prison. A very normal case of as far as a homicide is concerned. He stabbed the guy right in the heart, killed him, and then tried to claim self-defense and that Austin Metcalf, according to the defense lawyer, just like fell on the knife and that happened. It was just an accident. No. So why do I bring Congress into this? Because Jasmine Crockett, who's still upset that she lost her Senate primary to James Tallarico, understandable girl, she's out deciding to embarrass herself, her party, and just make a mockery of all of it in front of the country, beginning by saying, okay, I know that the Metcalfs lost their son. They lost their son to a violent murder, but you know who really has it tough? Black women.
Black women, especially Black women who have Black male children, live in fear and agony every single day. A fear and agony that I promise you, the Metcalfs probably never spent a day living that way. And we're going to have just some real conversations about race in this country.
Yes. Oh, yes. The horror. Oh, no. You know, yeah, sure. You may have lost your son. Sure. He may have been brutally murdered. But you know who the real victims are. The real victims, Black women who just don't like things. Yes. Interesting decision to go that route. I don't personally recommend going the Michelle Obama approach. They just did this. No one ever really hears Black women because we never ever talk about how hard it is to just be me, This kind of stuff is not going to fit. It's really not. It's not going to play with a lot of people. Here's the former vice president making that, that exact nonsensical claim that no one ever hears Black women complain.
We don't articulate as Black women our pain because it's almost like nobody ever gave us permission to do that.
And yet every single time anything happens ever, the very first group who comes out to go, you know who's really having it hard? Me, are the racism activists from the Black lady delegation. The very first, who are always going, all right, I know that you lost your son, but you know who really has it bad? Me. Has anyone talked to me lately? Anyone talked about my feelings?
Does anyone care?
Does anyone care? There you go.
Yeah, there's that.
Well,
they care.
If
that
we
part.
knew, I think we would care.
Yes, then there's the emasculated cuck. Honey, tell your boyfriend that I care. I care. If we knew. If only we knew. Yes. Excellent. Thrilling. Exciting. Wonderful. In spades. Okay, so moving forward here. Then Crockett suggests that, you know what? She's really going to show some solidarity. She would have stabbed Austin Metcalf too.
If a 300-pound man is beating me, like on top of me and beating me down.
By the way, once again.
The land of make-believe.
Didn't happen. No witness account. Not a single witness account. From the friends, from the enemies, from those on the other side of the track field there. No one said the Metcalf twins were out there wailing on Karmelo Anthony. Didn't happen. Radio crew, will catch you guys on the other side of your commercial break. We got to continue on the live stream because the FCC doesn't just let me do whatever I want. It's the Tony Kended Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, we'll continue while they're gone. We'll let her continue.
I'm not limited to fist. I would argue that even the only time we go into things like people's hands being considered deadly weapons is typically like if they're a professional boxer or that kind of stuff. But I think by the time you start getting to like football player, good argument. Good freaking argument.
No, honey, sweetie baby. And also for those who are watching the live stream side of things, also just as far as the size difference thing, According to some of the reports here, at least the evidence presented and reviewed on NBC News, Austin Metcalf was like 50 pounds larger than Karmelo Anthony. And even then, I'm sorry, at what point you chose to go over to the tent and start harassing the other team? They act like it was the downpour from Noah's Ark and flood. No. Went over there, started getting in and being well, no other better way to put it, being a jackass to other members of the team, was asked to leave, was then told to leave. You're not supposed to be, you're not your team, not your school, get out of here. He said no. And then they started doing the square up, you fight me, you fight me. And then, after the very first thing, as soon as someone reached out and touched with the bare hand, Karmelo Anthony, he then goes and stabs Austin Metcalf. And so Jasmine Crockett's like, yes, stab him. Now, by the way, she simultaneously tries to suggest two things. Number one, that the knife he used was not a deadly weapon. Okay, here's Jasmine. We got the switchblade.
Awful. Was it a switch? I don't know what he had.
It was like it seemed like it was a multi-tool, almost like a Swiss Army.
Like with the little scissors and everything and whatever. So it was small. Well, I would argue the size of it alone, you wouldn't even think it's a deadly weapon.
By the way, for the record, it's not a multi-tool. It is what looks to be like an assisted opening, like just a Walmart folding pocket knife. It was not a multi-tool. It wasn't pulling out the MacGyver Swiss Army knife and trying to open a bottle of wine. It wasn't even a deadly weapon. By the way, do you know how we know it was a deadly weapon? Because he used it like one. You know? Yeah? And basic intelligence, IQ over 5, you know? So the best part is this is from today. She then, outside of her office, says one of the most insane things I've ever heard. Oh, it's okay that he did this because, well, you know, he only stabbed him once. It's not like he stabbed him like 5 or 6, 7 times or anything.
35 years for a kid who had decided to go under a tent that was not his team's tent as it was raining and simply didn't want to be put out in the rain by some random kid that he didn't know who was larger than him. Listen, a lot of people don't know what it is to live as a black person in this country, but
here we go.
Just like you can give the benefit of the doubt to so many police officers when they go out and they shoot some black unarmed person.
Oh, there, yeah, excellent. Real special. You know, I'm starting to think the whole TMZ going to DC was actually a pretty good thing. So, by the way, age 19. Miss me with that nonsense.
Even though they are trained, the fact that there was little to no mercy seen or humanity seen. He
should have gotten life. He should have gotten life in prison. He got 35 years. That's a mercy. Honey, sweetie baby. Incredible stuff. Exciting indeed. So that kind of stuff is on one side of the Democrats' big plan. This also comes down to Democrat Representative Summer Lee suggesting that what Democrats need to focus on going into the midterms this year is we need to start voting for black reparations. Give me money. Pay me money. Give me money. Exciting things and exciting times. Now, the radio crew is coming back from their commercial break. I do need to go back out and do a full commercial in. So don't go anywhere. This will take like 10 seconds. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So in the meantime, while we're having just chaos and nonsense, there are far more in the fraud cover-up stuff. We'll get to some of the updates on Belfast, where the English and the Irish are protesting against being beheaded by foreigners from Sudan and Somalia and other wonderful third world places around the world. And here at home, while we have one part of Congress who is screaming that everyone who asks them anything is racist, you have another part that is desperately trying to whistle past the graveyard over major fraud. So the primary, the up and front and center donor organization that helps Democrats raise money in elections is called ActBlue. It's an app. ActBlue is an organization that takes donations in and then ferries them out at the request of the DNC. Like PayPal or Venmo or Give, Send, Go, or GoFundMe, but for Democrat donations. And Act Blue is under a series of investigations because they took foreigner money, allegedly. And then they did take foreigner money. There's no allegedly there. And then they did a little laundering of it, allegedly, and didn't report it to the IRS because you can't take foreign money and use it in American elections. Now, if you're an American who wants to vote or donate money based on something that has to do with another country, that's your right as an American here, as a citizen here in the United States. But you can't take direct foreign money and donations from China and from Qatar and from England and France and then use those in American elections. So when questioned, CEO Regina Wallace-Jones, instead of answering a couple of questions about Act Blue, again, the primary Democrat funding apparatus, she decided, you know what it's time to do? Plead the fifth like 25 times.
Mr. Garcia in his opening statement said we're here because Republicans are playing politics. Let's be clear. We're here because Act Blue's legal counsel said Ms. Wallace-Jones lied to Congress, willfully and knowingly misled the Congress of the United States. That's why we're here. Oh, by the way, who was the legal counsel, Covington Burling? Who was her counsel? Dana Remus, not some Republican. She was former White House counsel for Joe Biden. That's who said that. That's why we're here. So I just have a couple questions for you.
Again, to sum that up for you in case you missed it, he says it is in fact Democrats under the Biden administration that first said, hey, you guys are not only using foreign money, but you're lying to Congress about it. And the last time I checked, that ain't legal.
Ms. Wallace-Jones, just a couple. Your board chairman said Act Blue accepted up to 38 million contributions in 2024 that had the signs of foreign origin. How much fraud is too much fraud?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
So you see the smug look on her face. She is prepared to do this for the entire hearing. And so she does.
How many foreign contributions did Act Blue accept?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer
the DOJ's not going to like that, honey, sweetie baby. It's not. You think that Todd Blanche is going to sit around on that one? It ain't happening, Captain. That's major fraud that is going to be an issue because Democrats, as you may recall, the DNC is deeply in the hole right now. $14 million on hand, $17.5 million in debt. I've done the math. That ain't good. Republicans are swimming in cash heading into this beautiful election season. You say, but wait a minute. I mean, isn't Graham Plattner doing super duper well up in Maine? And he's like really wild and radical. There's a blue wave, a big blue surge coming. Well, no. In fact, the Graham Plattner chaos and drama is really starting to get rough. Why? Because as I had pointed out earlier this week, there are Democrat strategists galore right now. Those who basically, you recognize you're part of this part of the party. And so then you go on network TV in front of articles outlets and you say, based on my experience and understanding in the political sphere, this is what I believe the party should do, is doing what's going on. All right. They're the donkey whisperer or the elephant whisperer. Or if you're libertarian, the never getting elected to anything whisperer. I don't know. That's the strategist style of stuff. And so the Democrat strategists, most of them, came forward last week and said, this is too much. This is not good. He really should step out of the race because running in a primary is very different from running in a general. It's what Republicans learned in 2018 and 2022 when they ran a couple of wackadoodles who did really great in the primaries and then got beat like daddy over the knee with a belt by the core general election. So Graham Plattner, he's decided now's the time. And people are waiting for Susan Collins to engage because Susan Collins really hasn't thrown any punches. The actual Republican National Committee and all of the PACs, they haven't really gone all in on Graham Plattner. He said, wait a minute, he's won the primary. Why isn't everybody going in? This guy has all of the scandals, all the problems, up to and including the fact that as of last week, he had an active account on the application that is the haven for predators chatting with minors, where it was known he was directly messaging women. We have no idea what age they were, but given the reputation of the site, just married his wife in 23 and has cheated on her dozens and dozens and dozens of times since then. So, I mean, we'll talk about the whole redemption angle. This man's got problems. And so there's a Democrat strategist who have been asking openly, well, gee, why haven't the Republicans actually been swinging with all their might? This is mostly just kind of grassroots outrage at this point. And the reason is because Democrats still have time to get rid of them. They have until July. If the Democrats before July tell Plattner or convince Plattner to step out of the race, they can then insert Janet Mills or somebody else. Because that's exactly what they did with the old Kamala Harris, Joe Biden routine. So, what are Republicans planning on doing? Waiting. If Democrats think this is the guy that's going to do it, if the Democrats aren't even learning from Republicans' own mistakes here, then by all means, let Graham Plattner sit and think everything's cool, calm, collected, and decent until the end of this date in July. Radio crew, I know you guys are done with your broadcast time. I know some of the TV stations are sticking with us a bit longer. YouTube.com/Daily Signal. That's where you'll find our live coverage. We'll catch the radio crew tomorrow. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right. To move forward, there are a couple of candidates that Democrats are getting increasing struggles with. Graham Plattner is, in fact, one of these individuals. You can tell that Senator Susan Collins, again, with all of her issues, she's a moderate Republican. Independents do not hate her. And Graham Plattner is trying to run loop-de-loop, scoodly-doops, just trying to go after Susan Collins, and it ain't working. So he suggested, well, she sent me to war. No, you volunteered. You volunteered to go. He said, well, she gave me PTSD. No, she didn't. After you got home from your time in the military, you then turned around and worked for the crappiest garbage bin private military company of all time, Blackwater. You chose to then turn around and go do Merc service. But anyway, here he is. This is Collins. He threw up this clip. Here's Collins talking about this kind of stuff.
It's obviously not true. The people of Maine know me well, and I know them well.
So he's trying to go after Susan Collins for the Brett Kavanaugh vote. As you remember, the Brett Kavanaugh vote was all about how Christine Blasey Ford, who there's no corroboration that she'd ever even met Brett Kavanaugh, had totally raped her, and it was all in the yearbooks everywhere all the time, and her story changed every time, and it was a huge mess. Graham Plattner, who is credibly accused by individuals' Instagram posts, text messages, corroboration of other individuals who knew both of them, that he participated in domestic abuse, shook a woman, yes, a friend of mine, grabbed her by the shoulders enough to leave marks, threw her in a room, and then shut the door and held her in there. That would be the legal definition of kidnapping, while also, drug crimes, gun crimes, all other kinds of stuff. I don't really think that's going to work. Trump also took a swing at Plattner today.
He was so bad. He's a bad guy, just a bad guy. He must be laughing up his sleeve when he looks at these idiots going like Schumer, well, he's okay. He's not okay. Can you imagine if the Republicans had him?
Oh my God.
How about if we had him, John? So
We don't let it happen.
I really believe it. If it meant losing the Senate, you would not let that happen.
Correct.
It's just a terrible thing. I mean, I watch it happening. It's unfolding. It's really history because there's never been a guy like that that's ever run for office. At any level. I don't think at any level. And the excuses, they come up every day. Somebody comes forward with really proven stuff. Even his business, he's not a businessman at all. His parents supported him. Guy's a loser.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Now, Plattner has come out, he said his entire campaign is about redemption, which is interesting because he simultaneously wants everyone to think, I have redemption and I have done some of these things, but also I didn't do any of these things. Ro Khanna's struggling to keep up. Ro Khanna, the guy who went and doxed innocent people from an FBI lineup that just looked like a guy the FBI was investigating and then brought one of Epstein's groomers to be his guest at the State of the Union, that Ro Khanna. The socialist that Thomas Massey couldn't get enough of, that one? Oh, yeah. Anyway, so Ro Khanna's having trouble keeping up with the Plattner changing stories because Plattner's now simultaneously trying to say there's nothing out there that's actually that bad. And the stuff that is there that I'm not going to tell you what it is, it's true and I'm sorry, but the stuff that is also out there, I didn't do any of it and everybody's lying. I was framed and stuff. Here you go.
You say there's nothing out there that could be concerning. And this may seem a little bit rich.
There's nothing out there. I just want to make this clear. There's
There's nothing out there that's actually concerning. People will make everything seem very concerning because that's what people do in politics.
Oh, see that? Oh, it's just people are making it seem concerning. Ro Khanna, who just went up to the rally with him, is admitting, yeah, these accusations are terrible and they're awful and they're horrible.
We had a rally planned, and I want to be clear. His actions were misogynistic. They were shameful. They were wrong.
Oh, interesting. Ah, those standards. Guys, when the ladies of The View, the freaking View, are stepping forward to go, then it's time to, it's time to flag them down. It's time to, it's time to pull the alarm. Western Lensman sent that previous clip and then this one over. Here's Sonny Hostin saying, this has screwed Democrats over at taking any moral high ground ever, which is a little cute, but nice to see them admitting it.
Republicans at this point can ask us to take the moral high ground. There you go. That is over at this point. That's right. That is over. It's a choice. I am sorry. Democrats have always fallen in love and Republicans have always fallen in line. It's time for...
First of all, I love this. I do. From both parties, because both parties accuse the other ones of always falling in line. Both of them. Both of them, they always do. Oh, Nancy Pelosi's got them Democrats in lockstep. And then they'll turn around, Nancy Pelosi will go, those Republicans, they're falling in lockstep. Political parties, political party, folks. That's how it works. But it is funny watching her go, we don't have room here to go moral high ground.
Democrats to stop that nonsense, put emotions on the side. Let's be strategic. Let's get some power. Yes. Let's take over the Senate. Yes. Let's take over the House. And let's right the ship. Let's get our country back.
I mean, just admitting it. Oh, actually, we're just going to go ahead and go for some power instead. Okay. Best of luck to you. And then my personal favorite here at the tail end of this is Graham Plattner getting out in front of the crowd and saying, this is a story about redemption. Incredible.
Love and redemption. Redemption is not just some simple or easy destination. It's a journey. I've made mistakes in my life. Mistakes that I regret, that I live with, that I continue to learn from.
Sure, I was maybe messaging minors last week, but can't we all just move on? Think about things? Buy a smoothie? Really think about it? Sure, I'm now being caught for my oyster farming business being a huge sham. Maybe his mother's restaurant can't even get enough oysters from her son's oyster farm for the restaurant. But simultaneously has to order like great value oysters because her son's farm isn't produced. I mean, his son's farm's a sham, like Ilhan Omar husband's winery style sham. But it's about redemption, guys, redemption.
I'm still far from perfect, but every day I wake up and I try to be a little bit better and a little bit kinder than I was the day before. Oh, bro! And if you give me the chance, I will be a senator for the people who cannot afford to buy a senator.
I will be a people for the Senate who can't afford to buy a senator. Now, I might text your daughter in a towel, but I mean, hey, I redemption, I mean, sure, I'm going to follow Bernie Sanders, and I'm going to yell and scream and cry, and sure, I'll do a lot of really bad stuff behind the scenes, but remember, the important thing is that socialism keeps the billionaires and the oligarchy and the people from doing the thing. Stop it. The taxes. Gotta do the thing. Blah, blah, blah. Great. Excellent. Stellar. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled for him. Zoran Mamdani is also now trying to walk back some comments. So there is a Democrat Socialist of America lady who is now a House candidate. And he endorsed her. Again, she's said really horrible, awful, evil, disgusting, terrible stuff. You guys know the drill. The same kind of garbage that you would expect the pro-Palestinian whatever group to say. Now Zoran Mamdani is out there trying to say, I had no idea any of those things when I endorsed. Yep, sure. Best of luck to you on that side of things. So here we're going to shift over onto this kind of broader media narrative strategy. There was a time where you would see in the country a group of individuals who were part of these large network news outlets. And the network news outlets would come forward and they would bring you the news and their take on it, and they'd have their panelists. And then that age kind of went to the wayside. You went from the network, or I should say the Spectrum TV and radio channels, to the online cable era. And then cable news had its day in the sun in the aughts. And then from cable news, you had a small era, which was all online publication stuff. And where the online people were writing, that's where, you had Fox News articles and CNN articles and the National Review and the Washington Post became a national online publication, the New York Times as well, that kind of a thing. That gave way to the podcaster and influencer era, where anyone could pick up a phone and record a video and be an influencer. And I made the contention that finally, after a lot of individuals out there have let people down by turning into absolute crazy, nonsensical clowns like Candace Owens, who spends her time praising how wonderful Moscow is, like Tucker just did. It's so transparent. And telling us all that Charlie Kirk told her in a dream that Egypt worked with Erica Kirk for the Jews or something. I'm sorry, I don't speak illiterate influencer. Anyway, that age is finally starting to end because a lot of these influencers are starting to rely on botting networks. And so therefore something's coming next. And I've talked about this on the show before. There are a couple of cases in which, if we're going to look at what comes next, I'd rather bring on someone who actually has experience in this. So we're going to come out of the commercial break real quick, and we're going to have a conversation with Jeremy Boring. He's the co-founder of the Daily Wire. Now he is with his own crew over at the Jeremy Boring Show. He's also done some phenomenal work with the Pendragon Cycle. And he's an individual who has an inside look at how these conversations have developed and where we're going next. Because an entire influencer and AI-slop routine pushed Graham Plattner to the front. It is. And so we're going to switch over there, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this conversation. It's a really good one. And we'll be right back. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Great to be joined by Jeremy Boring of course, the Jeremy Boring Show. And before we get started, we'll even cut off some of the rest of the introductory niceties. I did hear that your Pendragon Cycle, that Arthurian epic, has been nominated for a major award up in Canada. So I believe it's called the Leo, kind of like an Emmy, but for up there in the Great White North. So huge congratulations just right off the bat.
Well, thank you. The nomination is for Colin Cunningham, who is a really tremendous actor who plays the role of Vortigern in one of the episodes of the show. And it really is a standout performance. He deserves every honor for it. And, we couldn't be more thrilled to have Colin's performance and the show getting that kind of attention.
Well-deserved nomination. I know that a couple of years ago, you and I had the chance to talk a little bit in Franklin, and one of the things that I'd said to you was if they build, or if you build it, they will come. And you had kind of slightly disputed me and said that there was a little more to it than that when it comes to creating good media, when it comes to creating quality media. And it's something that over the next couple of years resonated with me. I thought about it while I was watching the Pendragon Cycle. I know that a lot of people have been thinking about the attempt at creating things that people are drawn to. And we see this throughout the whole influencer age. And it's seeped into Hollywood. Every movie is a key jangling experience. The Super Mario movies are trying to shove in as many references as they can for fans. Every movie is a sequel or a remake. Shows the same way. We seem to be finally, at least on the social media side, becoming out of the influencer age. A lot of the big followers of the influencer age, like the Gold Rush, seems to be dying off. And I'm once again drawn to that idea that you and I had talked about a couple of years ago in the, if you build it, they will come, not always being the case. Where do you see things going now that the influencer age of vapid, self-focused media and expecting people to like it and pay attention to it, where do you see that going?
Yeah. I don't know if I agree that we're at the end of the influencer age. Influencers have always existed and will always exist. I think a lot of what we're seeing is a reworking of the algorithms by the major social platforms to, in the past, those platforms favored accounts with large followings. And because they favored accounts with large followings, the influencer had a lot of advantages on the platforms. Now the platforms are becoming, in a way, the platforms are becoming even worse in terms of mental health. They're becoming even worse in terms of quality of content. But what they're favoring algorithmically now seems to be only engagement. And the engagement, if you look at X's algorithm, for example, which is open source, so you're able to see exactly what they're doing. They're not taking follower count, for example, into account at all. So the fact that you follow someone doesn't necessarily give you a disproportionately higher chance of encountering their content. The algorithm is only feeding you what it thinks you are going to engage with the most. I actually think that will probably lead to social media being even more corrosive, to lead to social media being even more addictive, certainly. I think we really are in the slop age of social media right now. And the question is, how long will we stand for it? I think we'll look back on the good old days of influencer culture before too long, just because at least in influencer culture, on a sort of structural level, you were able to coalesce around voices who you agreed with or who you had formed some sort of parasocial relationship with. And now I think you have the least control you've ever had really over what you encounter as a user on social media. And so for now, that disadvantages the sort of influencers. It also disadvantages media companies. So it's not as though we went from publisher to influencer and now back to publisher. It's more like we went from publisher to influencer to crack cocaine, which is really what the algorithm is serving us. But influencers will find a way to navigate this over time. There's never been a time in all of human history where there was no such thing as brand, where there was no such thing as brand loyalty or influencer in that sense. So I think I suspect that this will be the shortest of the social media fads to date. But I think it'll be a really corrosive one while we're in it.
I see so much floundering, though, and this is something that again also kind of haunts me, at night. To see, for example, CNN and their big network studios take Jake Tapper for a few days and put him in his own office to try to do a faux podcast sphere. To see on the Fox News side them doing the Fox One podcaster crew that they're in it one day and then they're out of it the next day, and then on the influencer scope, there are a lot of creators that are floundering because we are in that weird slop age. Yeah. And I agree with you there. But I think I'm trying to decide whether or not what I'm seeing right now when I see this large, desperate flailing around to try to get attention from all of these influencers, that's not working. It's not bringing in the hit, to use your drug metaphor earlier. Is this like other eras where we're going to see eventually them course correct? Because some of these large media corporations, as they're, the parents, the before time, they still haven't found the next way to engage. They've been floundering now for about a decade.
Yeah, well, I might go a step further and say they still haven't found the last way to engage. When you see Jake Tapper sitting behind his desk trying to do a podcast, you're really seeing 2 generations ago trying to do 1 generation ago. No one has figured out how to do what the algorithm is currently favoring, which is, engagement, true engagement bait in a way that we've not really experienced before. But yeah, audience capture is a very real thing. The need for attention is a very real thing. The parasocial relationship cuts both ways. Yes, it cuts worse in the negative. It cuts worse where the audience is concerned, but it impacts the host as well. It impacts the influencer. We get a dopamine hit when people click on our content. We get a dopamine hit when people leave us comments. We also get paid. And so there's very real need that we have to succeed in the medium when we engage with the medium that is perhaps more compelling than even what the audience is engaging with when they're participating. And so, people will figure out how to be famous and people will figure out how to make money. The question is, how will we as a culture figure out how to make sure that we're still getting information that's in any way connected to reality, in any way connected to truth, and not just judged on the basis of how much engagement it gets. You really see this with a lot of the influencer class right now has embraced incredibly bad ideas politically. They're on the dissident right in particular, they're engaging in sort of open anti-Semitism, a complete rejection of America's, certainly the history of the 20th century. Some of them are rejecting American history going back even much further than that. It's a really left-wing epistemology that we're seeing emerge on the dissident right.
Right.
But they're doing it for clicks. They're doing it because it's high engagement content. They're doing it because right now, raising conspiracies about the USS Liberty or things that seem somewhat shocking to most people does drive engagement. That is really clickable content. It's the crack cocaine of the info space. And so
into the parasocial, it also gets them called brave. And
it gets them called brave.
Amazing and wow, that kind of a thing.
That's right. Yeah, and they defend themselves by pointing to the numbers. In other words, they're saying, well, I'm obviously doing something good because I got 1 million views. And in the past, getting 1 million views meant something different than what getting 1 million views means today in this new algorithmic reality that we're in. I'm not sure today that getting high views almost doesn't per se indicate something bad. I mean, that's not quite fair. There are people who have built large followings, that have credible voices, who've maintained those large followings through being innovative in this space. Of course, that's true.
But I get the point that you're making there, though. Yeah.
Yeah, that it's the easiest way today, certainly, to get high clicks is to actually engage in behavior that isn't good, that isn't constructive, that is not helping to lead the audience, but only fueling the audience's addiction to rage content or shock content. And that's going to be, listen, that's going to have, people like to say that the internet isn't real life or Twitter isn't real life. You hear these sort of comments all the time. They point to maybe Thomas Massey's election results in his primary and say, well, the internet favored Massey 10-1, but the guy lost. So obviously this isn't translating. But I think that's a pretty short-sighted view. I don't think that it's that the internet isn't real life. I think that the internet is a leading indicator. It's that the internet is changing us, but the real world results of that change take time to manifest. And so I think we're going through right now the worst of social media, but we're not living through the worst consequences of engaging with all of this clickbait content yet. I think that's still, months and years ahead of us. We'll be dealing with this problem for a long time.
Well, then let's pivot this over to the audience side, and not just because it's a cool broadcasting trick to say, well, now let's think about the audience, but,
sure.
Now let's think about the audience here. Do you believe that the American people, or really just people around the globe, are going to reach a point where they are fed up with being given slop that doesn't translate to real life? Because there was a kind of in the early aughts, there was a slight rebellion against the QVC product era, where every product that was advertised on infomercials was going to do everything. And the sales dropped very sharply in the early aughts because a lot of the products didn't work. There was a social backlash element to it. Do you think we could see some of the same on the social media? And sorry to give you the state testing answer, but if so, why?
Yeah, I think we do see a pushback against it, but I don't think that is going to be what changes it.
Really?
Listen, we're fish and we swim in the water that we're given. Like we don't have a lot of capacity. This is the problem. I'll frame it for you in a different way. Sure. A lot of young men who you talk to hate the ubiquity of pornography on the internet.
Sure.
They rage about it. In conservative media in particular, it's been a huge topic for half a decade now. The constant push from young men in our audience in particular, the desperation that they feel about it, the shame that they feel about it, the hate that they feel toward the people who they believe have foisted it upon them, and yet they engage with it constantly. Mm-hmm. The free speech absolutist answer to pornography is to say, well, if there's something that exists, a piece of content that exists, and you don't like its impact on you, don't engage with it. But in the real world, pornography is incredibly addictive. In the real world, pornography is incredibly gratifying. We watch pornography because it does something for us on a biochemical and physical level that we like. And so we might hate the thing that we enjoy. We might think that the thing that we enjoy is bad for us, but our enjoyment oftentimes overrides the part of ourself that governs against doing bad things. Of course, this is true. This is why you have teen pregnancy. most people, it may not be true in this generation, we're slipping morally very rapidly, but certainly in my generation, we largely knew that sex outside of marriage was wrong. A lot of people felt a lot of shame about engaging in it, but that doesn't mean that their desire not to do it could override their desire to do it. I used to tell people that, the battle between the flesh and the spirit, as Paul describes it in the New Testament, it's not as though it's a ratio. It's not, you're 50% you want what the flesh wants and you 50% want what the spirit wants. And maybe if you pray really hard, you can tip that over to you 60% want what the spirit wants. And now you win victory against the flesh. It's not really like that. It's a real duality. It's like we 100% want the bad thing and we 100% want the good thing. And which one wins? Well, the apostle himself says the things I don't want to do, I do all the time. And so I think the same thing is going to play out, has played out with pornography. I think it plays out with all kinds of behaviors for which humans rightly feel shame. And I think that includes the sort of slop, rage bait, clickbait, shock bait, high engagement content that now the social media platforms are peddling to us like drug dealers. I mean, they're algorithmic drug dealers. They're saying, we know you don't want to want this, but there's a whole other piece of you that does want it. And the part of you that does want it will click. The part of you that doesn't want it won't stop clicking. It will feel bad. You'll resent us. You'll hate us for it. You'll hate yourself for it. You'll feel shame about it. You'll wish you had the willpower to stop. People will get rich selling you programs to get you off of it, just like getting you off of pornography or getting you off of alcohol or getting you off of drugs.
Right.
But very few people will be able to stop. And this is why I think I'm not a populist. I'm not a populist because people lack the capacity to do all the things that they want to do. And the capacity tends to go down in group settings. It goes down in mob settings. We're more likely to do the things that we don't want to do in the mob setting. And so I'm a Republican. I say this all the time. I'm a lowercase r Republican. I believe in Republican institutions. I believe that we elect representatives to both represent us and to lead us. People who don't forsake us, they do represent our values. They're not elitist. They're not detached from our set of values. But they also tell us when we're wrong. They also endeavor to lead us. And they have to exist in tension, because if they become too enamored of their own points of view, they become elitists. But if they become too enamored of our point of view, then they're populists and they're only playing to the mob. And what we need in this country is Republican leadership. We need people who understand the actual problems that we're dealing with, who don't play to our worst impulses, who actually appeal to our better angels. And listen, as much as I love small government, I am a true, in the tradition of American conservatism, I despise how much of a role the government plays in our lives. There is a role that good policy has to play in ordering society. And we need good policy to help us with problems like pornography and its ubiquity on the internet. We need good policy to help us with clickbait in the way that we're currently experiencing it. Not in the right. Clickbait's been a term for a long time, but I really mean this really in the year 2026. It's a brand new thing, this new algorithmic reality where we are only being served by the platforms, the most addictive, the most clickable content with no even consideration of our own stated preferences.
And therefore driving every other competitor to create the most addictive looking and acting content to be able to compete.
That's right. All the platforms are becoming some version of TikTok. And, even Elon Musk is guilty of this. Elon Musk says that what he wants is for the people to be the media, for the people to be the news, for us to be the reporters, because obviously there's 330 million of us in America. And, wouldn't it be better if we all had cameras and we were all working all the time to expose the truth? I don't agree with that. I don't agree with Vox Populi, Vox Dei. I think, Vox Populi, Vox Dei is the sort of Roman expression that the voice of the people is the voice of God. Right. Elon sort of cheekily uses it to represent his view. I'm more of a as was said to Charlemagne, the voice of the people is often close to madness. I think that's probably closer to true. But Elon is actually an example of what's true of all of us. What he wants is for Twitter to be a place where you can instantly find out what's true, because we have so open sourced the idea of, we've gotten past the gatekeepers and we've open sourced editorial, the editorial process. And yet, even though that's the thing that Elon wants, but he doesn't even do the thing that he wants, because what his algorithm actually does is it doesn't really even serve up up-to-date news content anymore. It serves up what it thinks you're the most likely to click on.
Right.
And so you see that even Elon is doing the thing that he doesn't want to do. Even Elon is living out the warning of and maybe it's not a warning, just the statement of reality given to us by the apostle, that the things we don't want to do are the things that we do, because Elon's incentives as the owner of the platform are actually to get us to be sticky. It's to keep us on the platform. It's to make sure that we're engaging and make sure that we're clicking. And so in that way, you see that even the owners of the platforms themselves don't want this, but we're all living in this world, this completely unregulated internet, and it's driving us all toward our worst impulses, because as it turns out, if we have endless opportunity, if you put a smorgasbord in front of us and you leave it there long enough, eventually we only eat the cake. We only eat the thing that feels good in the moment.
That duality.
That's right. And that's where there is a role for government. That's where there is a role for sound policy. It's also where there's a role for cultural change. But I think that in this case, we need help. We need help regulating some of these problems. And of course, once government gets involved, it's going to overreach. It's going to prescribe bad policy. Bad policy is not a good solution. But all of that comes with the territory. And this is the tension that always exists when you're trying to order a society.
I wasn't expecting to get into this facet of this with you, but I've been wrestling for about a year now. I gave a speech at a tiny Lincoln Day dinner over Republicans and the different factions of Republicans needing each other. You need the traditional conservatives. You need to an element, you need the populists who do have passion. You do need the technocrats, the establishment who know how the position works, what to do, and who, as you've said before, can actually lead and provide sound policy. Not that it has to be, but often tends that way. And then you need some of the libertarians, yes, even the libertarians who are rights-minded and a reminder that government overreach is ever creeping. And that balance, it bothers me because it's not easy to articulate. And even now, in talking to you about this, it's hard to say this in a way that's not going to get half the, people suggesting that, well, you're just an establishmentarian, you've sold out, or, well, you're just a populist from the other side. And all of this coming out of a conversation asking you simply, are we moving to a new age, or is this just more of the same packaged in a shinier, pixelated reality?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just make sure that we offend every person watching. We even need a healthy left.
Absolutely.
You have to have a healthy left in the country as well, because the left, as Jordan Peterson often points out, the left, looks out for the people whom the hierarchy leaves behind. The left helps the people who couldn't succeed on the basis of merit for whatever reason. Maybe it's because of illness or injury or other things that are harder to grapple with as a society. It's not wrong to have people whose impulse is to look out for fairness and equality. What's wrong is when things get out of balance. When the left is ascendant, then there's no longer a consideration for tradition. There's no longer a consideration for history. There's no longer a consideration for merit. There's no longer a consideration for what is ultimately true fairness, equal opportunity. But if you have no left at all, then often the hierarchical systems, the merit-based systems, do railroad people and run over people and leave people behind. So in the ordering of a society, you need a lot of these different voices to be represented, but you need them to be represented in the right balance. And the right balance is not, it is probably a very unsatisfying answer, but the truth is that the right balance isn't knowable. The right balance isn't like some equation that, the benevolent dictator couldn't foist down upon us the perfect balance, because it probably is always reacting. The body politic is always having to react to the realities of the circumstances of a fallen world. It corrects for actual problems, but then it overcorrects because it often lacks limiting principles and guardrails.
Swings again.
That's right. What we had traditionally in this country is a well-calibrated political constitutional system that it's not that body politic was never out of whack. It was out of whack many, many times in our history. We fought a civil war in this country. But it's that structurally, our constitutional system was so sophisticated and so honest about the reality of what man is and how man operates, because it was created by some of the most thoughtful people of their generation or of any generation, and because the hand of God was with the founders when they created this country in ways that they probably weren't even fully aware of themselves. So we had a system that was able to course correct, often with bad results in the short term. But over time, if you take a step back, it largely did a good job of keeping the bowling ball going down the lane. I would say that there have been a few times where that system has been badly compromised. Obviously, the Civil War is the most egregious example, but certainly nothing like the only example. And I think we live in a moment right now where the system is deeply unhealthy. I think in part it's unhealthy because we've compromised some of those constitutional protections over time. I think it's partially unhealthy because foreign governments, particularly the Soviet Union during the second half of the 20th century and the Chinese during the early part of the 21st century, have exploited natural vulnerabilities in a free and open society with mass media. Mass media is manipulable, and in a society with true freedom of speech and true freedom of the press, we have very few guardrails that we can apply. And so we think that a lot of our thoughts are our own when really we're being openly manipulated by hostile foreign.
Did you just bring this full circle? Did you just bring?
That's what you call. Yeah.
Oh man, I'd felt so bad for a couple of seconds. I thought, man, we have gone kind of off the rails as to where I wanted, and I didn't want to waste your time. But to bring it around,
I'm an old pro at media, my friend.
Oh, I mean, you don't have to.
I can get us
me.
back.
Jeremy, I really appreciate you spending a couple of minutes with us. I know that we went over what we expected to chat with you about, and we didn't put a fine point and answer on it. But I think you're right. We don't need necessarily a direct equation or an answer to what it has to look like. That's part of the marathon rather than the sprint.
That's right. And there are steps that are in front of us now. We have to focus on the health of the actual systems in the country that have allowed us historically to get through these moments. And there is a role that government needs to play. There's a huge role that Congress needs to play. Congress has been asleep at the wheel essentially for the last 20 years in this country. We're at risk of Congress becoming a vestigial instrument. Like, we have to have the representative part of our government actually representing us. And until we have that, I don't see an easy way out of some of these major problems that face us.
I think so. It's bizarre to, again, come back to just, man, we need Congress to be useful and not just a doorstop. But I mean, effectively, that's the point. Jeremy Boring, again, Jeremy Boring Show. Highly encourage y'all to check it out if you haven't already, which I find unlikely. That's obviously in the description on the Chiron, all that good stuff. Jeremy, thanks again.
Tony, thanks for having me.
All right, very briefly here on some of the bonus tonus side of things. Iran has launched a series of retaliatory strikes with a few drones and rockets, maybe an old hobo driving a golf cart. We don't quite know. But the Ministry of the Interior in Bahrain has signaled for cover. The air raid sirens be sounding. Also, in additional explosions reported in Surik, Khashtergurt, Abyek, and Karaj in Iran. So this is not over yet. There are some more explosions. There is some more spicy punches to be thrown. CENTCOM is also suggesting all of the U.S. naval ships are so far fine. So that said, I'm sure there will be quite a bit more to cover on this particular matter tomorrow. Also, I realize that we haven't had time this evening to go over the continuing protests and riots over in the United Kingdom, over in Belfast. As a reminder, riot just being the standard of the show for as soon as an individual starts lobbing Molotov cocktails, which at this point, I believe that the English and the Irish are 100% correct to do. So again, prayers for those who are currently resisting the influx of migrants to their country, and wish them all of the steadfast hope and help in taking it back, and that there are few incidents of collateral damage in that process. Also, Keir Starmer could have avoided all of this. We'll probably spend a lot of time tomorrow for our end of the week coverage digging into that. I'm getting a couple of reports on two clips suggesting that some of the information on one of the Molotov throwing may be an older video, so we're not going to show it to you because we don't know yet. That's right. We're going to double check our sources instead of just showing you the full this evening. We'll show it to you tomorrow. We'll get you all of the goods. That's why, I don't know, maybe it's why you tune into the Tony Kennett Cast. Maybe you have a thing for devilishly handsome, conservative, half Irish, half Cherokee, not the Elizabeth Warren kind, political dudes who look like every other conservative commentator in his 30s. Who knows? Either way, we're glad that you're tuning in at all. So, that said, have an excellent evening on this Wednesday, June the 10th. We'll be back tomorrow for more excitement, fun, and fancy-free good times. This is the Tony Kennett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.